Shoshana Rosa, and also to the great success and Hatzlacha and all her endeavors to our good friend, Rachel Chaya Bat Sarah, also known as Karen. So we wish her all the best, and all the headache that people cause her will go away and disappear.
Amen.
Very good. All right, so Avraham Avinu is really mentioned the first time in the last psukim of Parashat Noach, which is last week's parasha. And the parashiyot Lech Lecha and Vayikra really serve as the main story of the main parashiyot, the portions of his life. After that, in Parashat Chayei Sarah, we don't really have much about Avraham. It's really the end of his life already. We have the death of Sarah, the marriage of his son, and ultimately the death of Avraham himself. So the format in which we're giving us to the story of Avraham's life really is symbolizes, and it's really being captured in those words at the beginning of this parasha and at the end of the other parasha. It's almost like some kind of a stretch that is extending over about 250 psukim when it goes from the Lech Lecha of this parasha to the Lech Lecha of next week's parasha. The Lech Lecha of go from your homeland and from your father's traditions and so on and so forth, until Lech Lecha to the Har Moriah, to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and to one of the mountains of which I will tell you. But nevertheless, that's the story of Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu started to really reveal to us in his greatness in this week's parasha, Parashat Lech Lecha. A part of Sefer Bereshit is really dedicated to the story of his life, and which is quite interesting that in the Torah itself, we really meet Avraham Avinu at a very late age. The first time that Avraham Avinu, is appearing to us is he's already an old man. The midrashim on the parasha, the stories, the legend, and so on and so forth of this week's really help us to comply or to complete a picture about Avraham Avinu, and they tell us that at the age of 3 he already started his spiritual journey, and so on and so forth, as a young child, to a father who is a idol-worshipping entrepreneur, and he has an idol-worshipping business. He makes idols and so on and so forth. And his curiosity of Avraham Avinu, led him to really be able to distinguish and to recognize the fact that he's standing in front of God, and the whole entire world is standing basically the whole entire God. And well, first of all, that there is a God to the world, and he's basically fighting idol worshipping. He's struggling with this. He's trying to uproot it. He can't really seem to be able to do that. Idol worshipping at the time was really much rooted within the life of the people at the time. It was something that was very common. And Avraham Avinu, what he was doing, he made many people close to come to a life of worshiping in Hashem, and to believe in what we call monotheistic belief. So the first event in the life of Abraham that is really described in the Torah happened already when he was 75 years old. 75 years old, Abraham Avinu, could have probably sit down and summarize his life and to take an inventory of what he did and accomplished or did not in his life. Did he go to an overlanding trip? Or, actually he did not. He went to an overlanding trip when he was 75 years old. I hope I will do it a little earlier than that. But, 75 years old, and all of a sudden comes that event that has a tremendous meaning to his life, that really put everything else in the shadow of everything. And he's placed with a walking stick and is being told to go out to an unknown destination. I mean, just take your stick and simply go. And it's amazing at this age to be able to do that. As it says, for example, when it says, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, it said to him, Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoledecha u'bet avicha el haaretz asher alecha. Go to the land and we shall show you. He doesn't know which land yet. Just go and I'll give you this. As you go along, we'll tell you where you're going. And Avraham, of course, together with Sarai, his wife, and his other family members, and so on and so forth, other people, going from Haran, and they're walking to wherever Hashem tells them to go. So the Lech Lecha of Avraham Avinu, the first Lech Lecha of Avraham Avinu, the purpose of that is to bring him to what we call the Promised Land. The second Lech Lecha of Avraham Avinu means to go to the Akedah, which is really to bring his son as a sacrifice on the Temple Mount. So Avraham passes or goes through this journey from that Lech Lecha to the Lech Lecha, and that path, Rabotai, that trail that he was on, right? It's called the trail of Emunah, the trail of belief, because this whole Lech Lecha, from the first one of this week's parasha to next week's parasha, it's all about the development and the involvement of what we call Emunah, which is the belief in God. So between these two Lech Lechas, of course, there are two psukim. The first one is the Lech Lecha, and the other one is in Vayera. It really symbolizes the meaning of this path. And already in our parasha, it says on Abraham, Vehu Adam Arishon, and so on and so forth. It's already said that he's the first man that the pasuk says Vehe'emin be'Hashem. He believed in God. And in Vayera it says Ata yadati ki yareh Elokim ata. So it refers to Avraham Avinu as a person who believes in God, and then on the other one is a person who has the awe of God, or the fear of God, whatever we call it this way, Yirab. It's really the awesomeness of greatness of God. And of course, one has to wonder. One has to wonder if it's in the beginning of Avraham Avinu, before he became Avraham, when he was Avram, right? The pasuk tells us, the Torah tells us, with those big words, that he is Vehu He'emin be'Hashem. He believed in God. So what's the meaning of what it tells us in Parashat Vayera, Vayi achar advarim ha'ele, va'elokim nisa et Avraham? What does it mean? Why did he have to try him? What was the whole purpose of that? Tell him to bring his sign of the sacrifice. But because he already told them that the pasuk tells them, God basically telling God that I know that you believe in me. So why are you trying me here for? But the emunah in which we are talking about in our parasha has to do with the words of God. Don't worry, Abraham, right? I'm protecting you. You're going to have great reward, and so on and so forth. And what did Abraham do? He believed to what Hashem told him. He believed what God told him. I'll protect you, and so on and so forth. So we ask ourselves, but what did Abraham really believe then? Abraham, so if we're going to go look at this pasuk, at this verse, he believed in the divine protection, that God protects him, and the reward that he would be granted if he would believe in God. So he's like, yeah, I believe in that. But is that really believing in God? That's the question we need to ask. These are two different things completely. Of course, we always say that, and we know that is that reflection of these two different levels of interaction with God is being said by us many times, or a few times a day in Shema, when we say Kriyat Shema. There's two different levels of interacting with God. So we know, of course, we'll get to this a little later, so we know that, as we say, Ma'aseh Avot Siman Lebanim, right? Whatever the parents will do, the children would follow. In other words, the lifestyle, or whatever occurred to Avraham Avinu in his life, are really are like a path for us that we are all going to march in, and we are in the future going to follow as well. So what is the great secret of the great power that Avraham Avinu had, and how can we learn from that something to our lives? So the answer could be found in that original commandment in the first pasuk of this week's parasha, which there's so much said, so many things were said on this, so many different interpretations. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Avraham Avinu, he tells him, go. In other words, Lech, Lecha, Lech, Lecha. You should walk to yourself. What to yourself? And Atzmecha. Go get down to know really who you are. What is this all about? Who are you all about? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, he's telling Avraham Avinu that in order to turn himself to a really great person, right, he really needs to so-called cut his umbilical cord. That's not something that all of us are able to do. And basically, when you cut your umbilical cord, it's being commandment to go into a journey of spiritual growth, of self-growth, and self-revelation, to really discover who he is and what is he all about. As far as you can, of course, from any kind of mundane activity and societal activity that you are known and you're so familiar with, by Avraham Avinu answering that divine call to go to the promised land and so on and so forth, regardless of any kind of comments, it just doesn't make sense. Maybe because of that, or that's the root of what Bnei Israel did in the Midbar, when they told God, "Na'aseh v'nishma," we shall hear, we should do, no questions asked, we'll do. You said it, we'll do it. That stems from Avraham Avinu, who said, "Okay, you tell me to go, I'll get up myself and I'll go. Lech Lecha, go alone." He doesn't say, "Just me, anybody else is coming, can I do this alone?" I mean, I can't do this alone. I need some company, I need some, God tells him to go, he says, "Okay, let's go." And not for nothing, he was called Avraham HaIvri, because that is a trait that really well described Avraham Avinu for who he was. Regardless of the whole entire world being at one side, Avraham Avinu never was afraid to stand on the other side against everybody else. Everybody else is doing something, he doesn't have a problem to do the complete opposite. Not because of being, a sore thumb in somebody's eye, just because it just doesn't make sense. That kind of a thing is really implanted on all of us. To a certain extent, of course, we need to see if we're really able to tap into that. But Avraham Avinu was called Ivri because the whole entire world was on one side of the river, so-called, and he was on the other side. He did not have a problem with that. And that is, and you see it many times that that's something very common to Jews, that they, and in a way, that the Torah expects us to be like that, and we sometimes have a problem being that. We want to be like everybody else. We can't deal with peer pressure, right? So maybe that's the only thing, or one of the things that makes us survive. Because if we would comply with societal norms and expectations, we would not be Jews anymore. We will simply be lost. We will be like everybody else. So in order to maintain our identity, we need to do that. That was initiated by Avraham Avinu. Another point of view to the commandment that it sees, when we see that a request to continue developing and moving forward and so on and so forth, you could find it in the word Lech Lecha. In other words, continue going, not just Lech, Lech and Lech and Lech and go and go and go and go, because it's not, you should, and that's something that Avraham is trying to, the Torah is trying to teach us, is never to be satisfied with whatever you already did or whatever you already had achieved. The first time that is asked from a Jew, right, is to continue going, developing, to refine your ways, to go into different gates, to do things better, to become closer to God and closer to God. And how close can you get to God? Infinite. Closest you can get. So there's always to be in this progression to go forward and not to stay in one place. People that say, "Okay, I'm good. I made it to stay in one place." That is the beginning of the death. That's when you, as George says, yes, that you're joining God's reception hall, right? You always have to progress. Keep on moving. Keep on moving. That's why the Torah is like water. You cannot, make a commentary on the whole entire Torah, even though hundreds of thousands of books were written. Always more and always more and always more, and so on and so forth. Am Yisrael is the same thing. So when it says that, it means that to be a Jew is, as we said, not to step in one place, to be continual movement, in energy. That's what gives you chayut. That's what gives you liveliness. And regardless of what you think of yourself, is to bring yourself to a different dimension that is deeper and more complex than where you are now, in order to become better, to get closer. To be a Jew is really to be constantly busy with improving yourself and making things better, yourself, your environment, and basically the whole entire world. Not to say, all right, we're good like this, it's all good to go. And we see it many times when we say, Lehavili Imota Mashiach, to bring about the Messianic era, to bring about the Messianic time, not to just bring Mashiach and all right, let's crank up the tequila, get some lemons, and that Mashiach is here. We did it, guys. High five. Let's go. Let's celebrate. You know, give me some whiskey, some bourbon, some scotch. You know, we did champagne. How about champagne, right? No, it's always lehavili imot Mashiach. It's a continuous act of making this word better and more worthy, not only for Mashiach, but for Kadosh Baruch Hu, for the Holy Prophets to dwell into this world. Always, 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 always improve and make it better. Kadosh Baruch Hu commends Abraham Avinu to leave his past behind, and we are always obsessed with the past. To leave your past behind. The first call is to leave your country, to leave your land, and we say, of course, to leave all your desires and earthiness, aretz, atziut, artzecha, your land, to leave all these things behind, and to really be able to connect to the spirit, to the neshama, to this place inside of us that is really not corrupt. And in order to do so, you really have to abandon the thought or the mindset that materialism, you know, whether it's wealth and so on and so forth, that's what's going to bring you happiness and joy. That's not going to bring you happiness and joy. And Avraham Avinu lives a very wealthy house, really filled with all the delicacies of the old world and all the privileges and comfort of the old world. His father was a big avodah zarah maker, right? And he said, "All right, let's pack it up, honey. Let's go on the trail." You know, again, we were talking before about overland. Let me take my jacket off. I'm getting hot here, right? We were talking before about overlanding. So we're talking about overlanding, right? It's a beautiful country we live in, right? It's a gorgeous, beautiful country. How many of you would actually say, you know, honey, or not honey, even before you have honey, right? You said, all right, let's just stop what we're doing. Let's just go on a trip. You have no idea how wonderful it is to go on a 4x4 and to basically almost go anywhere you want. It's a tremendous sense of freedom. So why don't you do it? Well, maybe because you don't really want to be free. You don't want to discover. You're very good with going to the mall. Yes, you can drive a big SUV with big lights like this, with a winch and so on and so forth. You can give me all the details and all the spec, but you know what? The car looks like a gallon of a museum. Why? Because you don't want to explore. Which one of you is willing to let go? Meaning, to leave your internship, to leave your job, to leave your school. Take a break. What do you think is going to run anywhere? No, he's not going to run anywhere. If I'm going to tell you, let's say you have some kind of an internship to do in something worthless like school psychology or something of that sort, right? So, and somebody will tell you, listen, buddy, you know, how about this? I'll give you a well-equipped Land Cruiser. It costs about $80,000, you know, and with other things, with a roof tent on top, you know, and so on. It costs you about $5,000, and on top of that, I'm going to throw in another $1 million for you for the year. Are you going to leave your internship? Of course you will. Or maybe you won't. Or maybe you won't, because you like to feel imprisoned. You don't want to be free, because being free means taking the responsibility for your life and understand that it's all in the hands of God. When we are confining ourselves in this, you know, world that we know where everything is and so on and so forth, hey, I'm good, I'm doing great, but you're not. Yes, you might become the most influential prisoner in prison, but you, for crying out loud, you're still in prison. Very simple. What would you like to do? You know, see a beautiful moose somewhere in the Dalton highway, or keep company to an 80-year-old woman. You know, well, what do you want to do? What would you rather do? Freedom. Go, develop, explore yourself, make sure things don't work the way you thought they would work, and so on and so forth. These are very important things that we need to do. Challenge yourself to become better. How are you going to become better? By trying, by having pains, by having aches, like anything else in life. Avraham Avinu is going through that because God knows that that's what he needs to do. In order to be able to change the DNA makeup of the future nation, we need to do so. And it is an educational process that Avraham Avinu is going, and we are not willing to do so. We are very well feeling comfortable where we are, and we don't want to change where we are, but that's not what it means to be a Jew. To be a Jew is to never feel comfortable with what you are, is to simply continue and to go against the stream, because just like fish, that's when you get most oxygen. You know, the only thing that goes down with the flow. Go with the flow of things. You know what it is, dead fish and some other stuff, right? That's what it means. You got to change it. Challenge yourself. Go, challenge. Go on a 4x4. Go on a trip. Leave your internship to the side. Leave your school to the side. Nothing will happen. Leave your work for the side, because it's not really work. It's slave work. Go explore who you are. How are you going to know? You're going to tell me that you are going to, that you want to go get married and you have something to offer for yourself. And what do you have to offer you? You don't even know who you are. How are you going to find out who you are? Do you know how you act, for example, in stressful situations? And I'm not talking about being stuck on the Van Wyck or on the Grand Central with a traffic jam in the rain because nobody knows how to drive all of a sudden. Like washed away any remnants of our queue. People don't know how to drive. I'm not talking about stress like this. I'm talking, for example, being stuck with mud up to your doors and having to go down and cut trees, or going to the Israeli army as a soldier and figure out, whatever it is, figuring things out, getting out of your comfort zone. And that's what it is. In order to grow, you need to get out of the comfort zone. So if you follow the schedule of what society told you to do, in other words, you got to go to high school, you got to go to college, you got to go to master's, you got to get your internship, you got to get a job. That's what it is. Why bother living if it's already determined how you're going to live your life? Every single day determine how it's going to be. Otherwise, what's the point of living? Go live one day. If every single day of your life is going to be the same as yesterday, if tomorrow is going to be the same as today, which is the same as yesterday, why living? We already did this already. We did this trick. Live like every day is your last day. I mean, what's the point of living otherwise? I don't understand that. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, why did he have to go there? He couldn't speak to him in Aramna, in Haran. Just stop over there, become like this, make me a house, give me the Torah there, whatever. Why do you have to go over there? The reason is that you first of all have to shed from yourself everything that is comfortable for you. Then we're going to start talking. The same thing as you go to boot camp. You could be a big shot and so on and so forth. You go to boot camp, they undress you from everything that you had before, and now they're going to get to the core, and from that point on, they're going to start building you. Avraham Avinu is going into a boot camp. Get up and go. And where are we going? We don't know. What do you mean? Why don't you know? Aren't you God? I do know, but I'm not going to tell you, because it ain't your business, because it's not where you're going. It's what you're going to learn to do what I am asking you to do. And we need to remember and understand that. So knowing that, right? Knowing that, and Chazal telling us, the whole thing about being richness and so on and so forth, because in our days, the way we view the world is very crooked. We view the world that if we're not going to achieve a Beamer or a Mercedes and so on and so forth, if I'm not going to get a villa in Great Neck or in Small Neck or in, Smelly Meadow, Freshy Meadows, right? If I'm not going to get my big house like that, or if I'm not going to get my fancy car, if I'm not going to get my yearly cruise cruise to the Caribbean includes everything, if I'm not going to get my ski vacation in, whatever it is that people go to ski vacation, that means that I really didn't make it. I'm not happy. I'm not happy unless I'm going to get this. And that's absolutely not true. It's absolutely not true. And Chazal is telling, of course, I did not say anything about, Gucci, Gabbana, and getting all these things. And, if I don't have this, oh my goodness, it's horrible. I don't have my designer bag or designer this or designer that. I mean, I don't know. I think designers are good. I find a lot of designer stuff, for example, at Walmart. There's very good designers called George. Very good designer. It's a Walmart brand. I mean, what's wrong with that? You want a pair of jeans, get a pair of jeans. Why you have to pay $300 for a pair of jeans? You can get something for $15, right? Pair of jeans, and so on and so forth. But you think that that's what's going to bring you happiness? That's not going to bring you happiness. And Chazal already said it to us. Chazal tells us, "En adam met b'chatzit avato b'yado." You don't die. You don't depart from this world with half your desire in your hand. And the Midrash tells us, you wanted, let's say you wanted 100, let's say 100, right? You got to 100, you want 200. You got 200, you want 400. In other words, not only that you don't get what you want, your dissatisfaction with what you have increases the more you have. Because you don't have time to stop and smell the hummus. You don't have time to and really appreciate. Oh my goodness, look at Hashem! Thank God what I have. You're only busy in what you don't have, and that's a very crooked, stupid way of living life. Let's appreciate and be thankful for what we have, and forget about what we don't have. Because what we don't have, it's not here. I mean, do you care about the snow that happened 3 years ago? No, not from this. I don't really care. So why do you care about stuff like that? Because we were trained like this. Why we were trained to think like this? Because like this, we could be controlled. We cannot be free. And guess what? We are very much freedom. Nonsense, empty words. Nobody wants to be free. Going to be free is living like Avraham Avinu tells us to do. And Judaism, of course, is a way of life. And as a way of life, right, is, it's somewhere, and maybe because, the land of Israel is somewhere in between the east and the west, it needs to find a balance between, we understand, you can be a hermit living on top of the mountain, meditating on the law, and you can be a person who's like a donkey, working on it with nothing spiritual. We need to find a balance to do so. And the balance to do it is very difficult. And Avraham Avinu comes, we don't know how to do it, come Avraham Avinu, and he teaches us how to do so. And that's why, not only to us, through us, that becomes the instruction for the rest of the people of the world, we say. And that's what we are called Am Sgula. Am Sgula, because in the merit of what we, supposedly act, based on what the Torah tells us and our forefathers, they're going to be light to the nations. And then we need to understand that by nature we're being drawn into societal norms and so on and so forth, whether it's routine, whether it's peer pressure and so on, expectations from the people around us, our own bad habits that were implanted and engraved into us from childhood. So all of a sudden comes a guy like Avraham Avinu, and it's really supposed to come and ask we should come to ask each and every one of us the question, all right? And the question is, where did I get my point of view? Why do I think the way I think? Did you ever stop and ask yourself, why am I thinking that? Why am I doing what I'm doing, right? Is this a mindset that I adopted for myself or something? I mean, you see it today, how basically the media controls or runs the country, not the government. The media runs the government. It runs the country, and then in return runs the world. It's all about, and all of a sudden you find yourself, you go to listen to a certain radio station or watch a certain television station, and before you know, you are saying the same rhetoric yourself without actually thinking. It's like, well, why am I saying what I'm saying? You're going to convince yourself that that's the right thing to do because that's the pressure that you follow, and that's something that is not really Jewish, right? I mean, for example, how many of you ask yourself, the fact that I was born a Jew doesn't mean anything to me? Is there any meaning to what I'm doing? Or I'm just doing it because I don't know, that's what I've been doing, Why? Is there a meaning in what I'm doing? And for example, one of the reasons that we have, I think, one of the reasons we have people who are, we call, go off the derech, is not because, let's put it this way, it's not because that Judaism is boring or something like this. It's because they never ask themselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? It becomes meaningless to them. If you're going to sit down and say, in other words, don't take anything for granted. Ask yourself a question, why am I doing? Is there any value to what I'm doing? And therefore you all of a sudden find out that you are the one who wants to do it, not something that you were prescribed to do. But we're afraid from these questions. You know why we're afraid from these questions? And somebody come and ask you and say, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because we don't want to ask the questions ourselves. So therefore, if somebody comes to ask the question, we make sure to suppress it. We say, okay, don't ask questions, Habibi. And we right away label it with a thing like a heretic or a picores or something like this. And with our own hands, we push him out of the door and we kick him and we close the door, make sure he doesn't come in. All he wanted to know is like, can you tell me what I'm doing? Apparently we don't know. So that's why we're so much offended by such a question. And it should really be, you're right. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the quality of the relationship that you have with God? Are you worshiping God just because you're afraid of things, or just because you want to receive things, or only because you want God to give you what He wanted to give you? Remember what we said beforehand. Or you're doing God because of something else, and we'll see maybe what it is. So, and we need to understand that Avraham Avinu is the father or the patriarch of our nation that shows us, that gives us the Torah, the nation that gets the Torah, it's not something that we should take so lightly. We should look at his ways, and we should really try to understand and analyze what he's doing. And to get from the level that Avraham Avinu was the patriarch and to the point that we received the Torah, let me tell you, it's a big journey. We had to evolve many, many things, and we had to question ourselves and put ourselves into stressful situation to really figure out who we really are. And of course, you're going to tell me, okay, so at what point does this thing end? And then we'll see. And it's a very interesting question. And it all depends and it has to do with how and why we interact with God and why we're doing the things we are doing. Now, of course, we said before there's two different types of Yirat Hashem. The Yirat Hashem that really directs the person to what he's expects, and so on and so forth, or that he's afraid that God expects God to do to him, or he's afraid of what God will do to him. And then there is what we call Yirat Elokim that directs the person to what we call Yirat HaRomiyu, to the greatness of God. I'm like at sheer awe of God. Like if you see this enormous mountains or like unbelievable waterfalls, and you understand that, you say, oh my goodness, this is so big and awesome, so how great God is. But when you are closed in within your city, you don't have time for God because everything is man-made. In a way, God does not exist in the cities. We make sure that we cover the skies with everything, and it's all our power, and we make so much noise that we won't even hear the internal voice inside that we have ourselves. And that's why you need to get out. Lech, Lecha, get out. Take time out. You're all busy running. And look, again, coming back to COVID, the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, guys, stay at home. And so therefore we try to do things, right? And Kadosh Baruch Hu said, guys, wait, stay home. Take a good look at yourself. Take a good look at your family. Learn from this. But we said, no, everything. So the long way that we have from the first Lech Lecha until the second Lech Lecha is, as we said, is a lot of events. And Asara Nisyonot, 10 different trials that Kadosh Baruch Hu tried Avraham Avinu. Of course, the Eser Nisyonot is to elevate him from the lowest one until the upper one, until the high one. From the lowest one of Malchut to accept the fact that there's God on this land, and he's Melech al Kol Haaretz, is the king of the universe, until Avraham Avinu was able to fix the midah of Keter, that is beyond my ability to understand. I'm doing things because God is so great, even though it completely contradicts every single thing that I believed in. But the way we know that there is an interesting midrash that it's brought about how is Avraham Avinu able to do all these things, and Shechti's son, but I don't want to really talk about it now, but it really has to do with this week's in the beginning of this week's parasha, but Bezrat Hashem will talk about it next week's parasha, with the way he able to basically fix himself limb by limb until he reached to the point that he was able to do whatever God told him, no questions asked whatsoever. So, and we know that everything with Avraham Avinu is all about not settling down. He's basically immigrating. He goes from Haran to Aram Naharaim. From Aram Naharaim he goes to Eretz Kla. From Eretz Kla he goes to Mitzrayim. From Mitzrayim he goes back. Everything, immigrating, never settling down. Never say, oh, my goodness, that's it. I am, all right, let's build the villas, let's get permits from the city, let's get an architect, let's build my villa. He's always going, and he lives in a tent. He doesn't live in a house. And there's something to tell about this thing. Again, what's the ideal of most of us is to have a big house, 5, 6, 7, 8 bedrooms made out of brick, and we make sure we will tell the guy who builds it, make sure it's going to stand for like 100 years. What do you care? You're not going to be here 20 years. But never mind, 100 years, I want the house to stand here, and so on and so forth, right? How many of us will say, what difference does it make? Let me make sure that every single day I meet new people, I see new. How many people will actually take the stuff, get a P.O. box, and just travel all over the United States? You're going to give me 101 Dalmatians, maybe, excuses of why you cannot do it, but I can give you 110,000 reasons why you could do it, or why you should do it. And the bottom line, it all has to do with how much you believe in God. You're going to say, okay, how am I going to get, what's the first question? Sam, or who is over there? Well, what's the first question you're going to ask? How am I going to
make money?
Make money. What do you mean, how are you going to make money? God will provide for you. You do what you need to do, and God will provide for you. I'm not saying don't go to work. He'll provide for you. How much money do you really need? You know, and again, why do we need such big houses? So we need a big house because we decided that's what society wanted for us. And then guess what? So you have to work. You have to work. You have to take insurance, and you end up becoming a slave to your own desires. It's a cycle that you can't break. And Abraham Avinu says, guys, this is not the way to go. Go up and down, go up and down the country. Go, it's yours, go travel. How many of you actually came out of Queens, for crying out loud? You know, most of you live in Queens, Brooklyn. You know, I don't think some of you even went to South Queens. How many of you, well, some of you, went to see Glacier Park or the Grand Canyon? How many of you? Hey, you know, few. Yeah, you internship over there. You didn't go anywhere. It's been erased. It's been suspended. Right? How many of you went? And if you went, how can you sit here and like pretend nothing ever happened? We spoke about it yesterday. When I go on the trip, I already make plans for the next trip. The latest on my last day on the trip. I already make a plan. It doesn't. Might end up going somewhere else. But I already planned the next trip. That's why, not for nothing, they call us the Wandering Jew. The only place we should settle down is in Eretz Israel, in our homeland. And even then, we have a lot of work to do. But that's only further down the road. Further down the road. Anybody seen here Joshua Tree, by the way? You saw Joshua, Mr. Internship saw Joshua Tree. Wow, how was it? Beautiful. When are you going there again? Exactly it. You don't know. See, it's all dependent on your societal norms. You can say, listen, I'm putting on a pause, I'm going, and I can't do it. Cohort, schmohort, you know, yalla, get a 4x4 and go hit the road. Hit the road. Be brave. Who wants to go to see the Alaska wilderness? To go on the Dalton Highway? Ah, he's a big smile on the face over there. Anytime you want to do it, right? Okay, so do it. Who's stopping you? Your fear stop you. You know, this says, and all of a sudden you tell me, I've got to be reasonable because mommy taught me to be reasonable and responsible. I can't do that. Yes, of course you can do it. You don't want to. Don't use mommy for that. And that's exactly what Abraham Avinu says to us not to do. So, you know, where else did he go? He went to Beth El, he went to Beersheba, and so on and so forth. And you know, throughout this life, he meets a lot of people. Abraham Avinu meets a lot of people. He makes friends. He goes to war. He helps people. He does a lot of things. He has a very full life. He lives something that is worthy to be called life. But and on through all these places, he develops. He evolves. If he would sit in one place, the only thing would happen to Abraham Avinu is get fat. You can't be spiritual just sitting out like that. So every place that he went and he wandered and he traveled and so on and so forth was a learning experience, and he was able to elevate himself and so on and so forth. And there's also failures in his life. It was not ever successful, you know, with everything. But that's a part of life. That's a part of life. So from the first Lech Lecha in this week's Parashat to the last Lech Lecha of Parashat Vayera is a journey from being completely aware to the divine commandment of Hithalech lefanai ve'heyeh tamim. Walk in front of me and be tamim. Tamim means whole. So walk in front of me, develop things, connect with me, and that's what brings you to the wholeness. Sitting down in one place, being stagnant, does not make you whole. On the contrary, it makes holes into you, not makes you whole. And when he reaches a certain level, a certain milestone, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a brit with him, makes a covenant with him. And as a matter of fact, he makes two covenants with him. The first one is what we call the Brit Ben HaBetarim. when he has this great vision that it takes him above the time realm. He goes into a completely deep meditative state, and then God's taking him into a different realm. It takes him out of time and shows him basically everything, and then he makes a covenant with him. And then the other one, which is more symbolic and physical, that's the Brit Milah, the circumcision that he has, which is a very live symbol of that covenant. But we don't have to, we have to remember that covenant is a two-way street. It works both ways. And the existence of this covenant is really dependent on the loyalty and the willingness of both parties to their commitment or their promise that they made to the other party in their own interaction and so on and so forth. In terms of what that means, it will be the covenant between them. And we know that one side, we call Hashem, Zocher HaBrit, he who remembers the covenant. Baruch Ata Hashem, Zocher HaBrit. But we, us, the children of Abraham, which we are, we call it side B, right? Or client B. That covenant is dependent on us. He remembers, but that covenant is dependent on us. And we, in any moment, are capable of violating this covenant. So from here, there is a great lesson that maybe we could all learn. That always people say, oh, the Zchut Avot, Zchut Avot, Zchut Avot. Zchut Avot is very nice, but you know, we think it's gonna live forever and ever. They forget conveniently that the greatest Amoraim and the greatest Baalei Midrash and Baalei Agada and many times after them even Rishonim, like Rabbeinu Tam and the Ramban, deal with this question: until when is Zchut Avot? The merit of the father, until when? Is it until forever? Or Me'ematai Tama? When did this end? Most of them hold that Zchut Avot already reached its peak. It's over. And what we are left with is the covenant. And because of this covenant, and the result of this covenant, we don't have the zchut, the merit. We have the chovah, we have an obligation. The covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made with our forefathers is still, the covenant is in place. But their merit, without us doing anything, is already over. Now it is our obligation. Now the ball is in our field. Now it's up to us. Up to us to make sure that this covenant still holds. And there are already Tanaim that said, Shlosha dvarim nitenu al tnai. There's three things will give it to us in a condition. Eretz Yisrael al tnai. You behave, you'll get it. You behave, you'll keep it. Right? Eretz Yisrael. Beit HaMikdash. Guys, I'll give you Beit HaMikdash. You behave, it stays. You don't behave, I take it back. Umalchut Ben David. The same thing, Malchut Ben David. You want Mashiach to come, you want to have the Malchut of Ben David back? Fine, not a problem. Do what I say and you get it. And you see from here that it's up to us now. And it's up to each and every one of us. Who is going to fulfill the conditions and terms of this covenant? Us or not? And every generation is being judged based on their effort to continue and maintaining this covenant. And we need to understand that all the stages, the 10 stages, as Avraham Avinu went, again, it is, you can reach it. You can reach this level. You can reach this level if you follow the guide of Mesilat Yesharim, the guide to the path, or path to the just. It's not for nothing called path. It's the path of how to become all the way to Yerei Shamayim. That's very important. So we have a guide. We have a book. Why don't we just take it and start implementing it one step at a time? That's not why Mashiach is not coming like this. Beit HaMikdash is not going to be built like this. Nothing is going to happen. It's us. And in order to be able to do so, we need to get out of the comfort zone. And don't forget that before the Mesilat Yesharim starts with this book, the first stage is Torah. So get out of your comfort zone and come to learn Torah. Come to Medrash to learn Torah. Now, it was given to us. Now the maintaining of Torah is depending on us. You have questions, ask your questions. If you meet somebody that doesn't want to answer your questions, go somewhere else until you get your question. You must ask your question. Don't take anything for granted. Learn Torah and then go step by step, until you fix it. Every gate over there that the Ramchal brings corresponds with another spiritual limb in the entity that it's called you as a spirit and us as a nation, to fix it, to bring it all the way to the fact that we have Ruach HaKodesh, we regain the spirit that Kadosh Baruch Hu had planted into us when He created Adam HaRishon, becoming in touch with that. And we need to get out of this comfort zone. Go from one place to another. Don't think that, okay, Baruch Hashem, I'm keeping Shabbat, I'm putting tefillin, it's all good. It's never good. There's higher levels that we can bring yourself up. It's not like in the secular world that you get your PhD, you get your BBC, you get your MD, and that's it, you're done. I mean, what are you going to get after PhD? You're going to get like PhD level 1, what is it, karate here? That's it, you're done, get a PhD, yeah, that doesn't work. In Judaism, it doesn't work like this. Levels, and higher, and higher, and higher, and higher all the time. So, Rabbatai, the job is ours. I don't know what's going to be in the world. Nobody knows. But I can tell you, I don't really care, because all I know is what I need to do. And I know what I need to do, and I'm not being left alone just to wonder. I have books, I have Rabbanim, I have Chachamim, I can do this, I can bring it together. Let's encourage one another. Let's start caring about one another. And again, it's not about the money that you make in your life. It's the bracha that you make in your money, in your effort. It's not how much money you make, it's how much bracha there is in your money. It's how much meaning there is in what you're doing. And meaning doesn't come by connecting to Netflix. Meaning comes from searching for meaning. Man's search for meaning. What are you living for? And don't avoid the question. Don't avoid the questions like, why am I doing what I'm doing? What gives me meaning in my life? And don't forget that money is not the meaning. Money is a mean to get something, but it's not the goal, because there's never going to be a limit to the amount of money you can make. Maybe some Democrats will going to put money, a limit on how much money you make. Well, we're not talking about that. There has to be something greater than that, and that's what meaning there is in your life. And if you're not going to search it, your life is not worth to be called life. Avraham Avinu had it hard. He couldn't have kids. He wandered. He traveled. He was going to war. He was 90 years old. But he had meaning in everything that he had in his life. To the point that until today, we call him Avraham Avinu. Avraham, our father. Even in the song you learn, Avraham Avinu, Padre Querido, Luz de Israel. He is the light of the Jewish people. Why is the light of the Jewish people? Because to his light, to his beacon, to his path, we all going to march. Have a wonderful